And we're here with The Art of Dreaming with your host, Michael Hemmingson, the host with the West Coast Dwarf Tossing Championship trophies. And I do have the trophies to prove them. No one can toss a dwarf like I do, but it was all in my past. And when I say things, Confucius quiets down and listens. I'm the man who asks, does Bigfoot think humans are pink, ugly, hairless, paranormal creatures that smell like shampoo? And I'm the host who used to hang out with Clarence Thomas in Nevada brothels where we used to harass hookers, but I never drank from his Coca-Cola can. Okay, today I want to do a special show on the man we know as Drake, real name Drake Bailey. He's on another station right now that'll end at 9, and I'm hoping he'll call in. He knows about it. He knows about the show, so I hope he'll call in and give his position. If he doesn't, we might hear from some others, or I'll just keep jabbing on. The reason why I wanted to do a show on Drake is because he's at that sort of make or break point out there. He's become fairly popular with a large following. Sort of has a messiah complex. He's got a lot of detractors now, along with followers, because his date and times that he gave for certain events to happen have come and gone, yet he's still saying they're on the verge and he's blaming it on other people or whatever. Right now I was just listening to him on this other place called Spreaker.com. He keeps jumping from like Global Talk Radio and Spreaker and these sort of amateur little tiny radio stations. I don't know why. He was on Wolf Spirit, and I know Nighthawk has offered him a place here. Apparently Drake used to be coming to the Revolution Radio chat rooms often. He just recently a video of a news story from 2010 in I believe Florida on chemtrails was found on YouTube, and he's on it because he was keeping his identity and what he looked like secret. But it turns out, I mean, we did know that he is in his 60s and a Vietnam vet, and he has and a militia guy, and he does have that sort of typical militia Vietnam guy look about him. He's got a big white beard and long white hair and a ponytail, with a camouflage hat and jacket. And he was just now talking about why he chose that look, because he said if he didn't grow up in that sort of tropical, humid weather there in Florida, that shaving really irritates your skin, so he started not to shave, and he decided to keep his hair long and not be clean cut until the day that the Veterans Administration started treating vets and soldiers correctly, which was pretty admirable. So before I start talking about Drake and my position on Drake, I don't want people to say that I'm completely against this guy. I mean, he seems very sincere, or that I'm some sort of anti-vet guy. I'm not. I've never been in the military. However, working as a foreign correspondent, I have been around the military quite a bit in Bosnia, Rwanda, Somalia, down in Mexico. So, and I do suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome myself from being in combat situations as a reporter, and having seen some things do it. So I do understand where these guys are coming from, including Drake, who does suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, and he often talks about it. So let's start off. What I'm going to do is read from an expose I've written about Drake, which I will post on my Art of Dreaming blog later tonight. It'll go through who he is, what's been going on, why he's newsworthy and worth giving this time about, not only here but on other places. I should know that Drake has been jumping around from radio station to radio station. He was last at Wolf Spirit Radio, and he and Deatra left over some arguments over Bill Brockrader, and then he left Freedom Reigns, which with Deatra, because over some controversy over censorship at Freedom Reigns, and $7,000 missing from the Freedom Reigns coffers from donations. At the same time that Deatra needed money to bail herself out of jail, and legal fees for a complication she's found herself in that she says someone else did. I don't want to get into that until more facts are out. Speaking of Bill Brockbader, this Friday night I'm going to do a special interview, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, with Eva Moore. She's Bill Brockbader's significant other, and she's been the conduit about what's going on with this situation. He's still in jail. We don't know if the grand jury convened last Friday. If they hadn't, they should be letting him out soon. But we will talk to her about that, what's going on with Bill Brockbader, what's going on with the Black Ops situation, and in her life. It should be a pretty interesting interview. And after this expose on Drake, Carrie Cassidy is going to be doing a special show via live stream, an interview with Courtney Brown. That's going to be simulcast here at Revolution Radio, and I believe it'll be simulcast at that other radio station, but we want you to stay here at Revolution to hear it. I do know that Carrie's charging, or has charged, admission for the live stream event, if you wanted to see it live, but of course she's going to put it on YouTube eventually anyway. But I know that she does need to pay for that live stream, the bandwidth and stuff. So that's that. So let's get on with it. Drake. A man known only as Drake hit the alternative media scene on March 29th, 2012, when David Wilcock offered a podcast interview on his site, Divine Cosmos. Wilcock stated that he had vetted Drake and concluded Drake was the real deal. A spokesperson for the so-called white hats in the Pentagon, generals and higher-ups, as well as people connected in the intelligence community who had plans to stop the evil cabal of bankers and politicians from continuing to enslave the world, mainly Americans, in debt and fiat money, stopping their plans of the industrial war machine and the death of millions, if not billions, of innocents. Like Benjamin Fulford, he claimed that blue skies were around the corner, all debts would be wiped out, a new financial system would be put into place, and no longer would good Americans worry about gas prices, places to live, food to eat, under the caveat that it would not be easy, that the cabal would fight back, that there might be a 72-hour to 2-week period of chaos, unlawfulness, the shutting down of the border and the infrastructure like delivery of food and water, electricity, and the internet. But fear not, people. The good guys have planned for this for a long time and know exactly what to do. A long time. As far back as the 1970s, it seems. As far back as the tale of Nasara came out. Drake claims that since his time in the military, going back to Vietnam, he has been privy to plans by the military to arrest all the bad guys, to try and convict them for financial crimes and crimes against humanity. Within an hour of Wilcock posting the interview, it went viral. The audio reposted on several YouTube channels. The transcript PDF was made available. Debates were springing up on forums and blogs everywhere like magic mushrooms in a bunch of cow patties. Within days, Drake was the talk of the town, the internet town, on the alternative media sector. And within weeks, after further radio appearances, a cult of Drake formed. The voice of change, the voice of freedom, the voice of a Messiah. But like all Messiahs who give dates for events, when the dates pass and nothing occurs, people start to feel betrayed and wonder if the messenger is a false prophet. We saw this with the Jehovah's Witnesses when they twice predicted the end of the world, but the world went on, and their excuse was that they used the wrong calendar. We saw this last year with Harold Camping, who claimed the rapture would occur in April of 2011, and when it did not occur, he said it would happen in October. And when that did not happen, he admitted to his faults and said he was wrong, unlike the recent case of Ronald Wineland, the Cincinnati, Ohio preacher, who claimed for a number of years that he and his wife were the two witnesses from the book of Revelations, and that Jesus and the 144,000 would show up in Jerusalem last May 27th, as the earth would be on the verge of World War III and nuclear Armageddon. Well, that didn't happen. Up to the last hour, Wineland kept telling his followers, "Wait for it." When it did not happen, Wineland said, "We must go on." And Jesus will come Pentecost 2013 instead. And that's the folly of deadlines and grand events. The messenger will often push the date to a year or so later, say that God changed his divine mind, that it was all a test. And when the mass arrests did not occur in the time frame that Drake had given, which was a time frame of, he said, 30 to 45 days, and he said this on April 8th, his excuse was that, the contacts in the Pentagon let him down, quote unquote, "They screwed me over twice and I was really upset." He was just the messenger, he claimed. But stuff was still going to go happen and that sort of thing. And then he claimed, just like also Ben Fulford has been claiming, that the Cabal wishes for a peaceful surrender. And instead of arrest and military action, a desire to work with humanity and usher in a new golden age, that the Cabal has seen the light. Say what? Previously, both Drake and Fulford expounded on how evil the Cabal was, and that they were murderers and Satanists, and that they tortured and raped children, and that they all they cared for was the darkness and war, that they were vile and foul and ugly, and, to quote Drake, "They definitely need to stop using our oxygen." Yet suddenly, they were all right. They're all right with a truce and working hand in hand with the Cabal. Have Drake and Fulford forgotten the tale of the Trojan horse? And who is, quote-unquote, negotiating the so-called surrender? Neil Keenan, the fellow who has filed the trillion-dollar lawsuit that David Icke had talked about and is all over the place. Not a general from the Pentagon, not an honest politician like, say, Ron Paul, whom Drake hinted at before would have been the interim president during this non-coup d'etat, but some guy behind a lawsuit who would use data from a vote of the people and the threat of mass arrests to bring the big bad banksters and politicos to bend the knee to the people. What vote? Drake called for a worldwide vote last week. Do the people want to arrest and kill the evil Cabal and rid them of the world, or come to a peace term and work with them? The vote, which tallied up to less than 5,000 people, was, according to Drake, 99.4% for the eradication of the bad guys. The thing is, Drake originally said that the vote was for the Pentagon white hats and Neil Keenan to determine their next move. And then, on the radio last Sunday, he said the vote was for his personal information only. "It don't mean a thing," he said. That did not sit well with many of his followers on Facebook who left him. Earlier, other contradictions came to light. Things Drake was saying and contending were starting to not make sense, for me at least. One, when someone asked him about the stories of the Chinese troops amassing on the border, and this was something coming from me, from a mention of it on Carrie Cassidy's blog, I being her unnamed source, to my discussing the matter on Revolution Radio at times. So I know about this. Drake claimed that his white hat group had made contact with the Chinese military leaders to make a deal so that they would not invade the USA when the crap started to go down, and that the Chinese would aid in the sweeping up of evil by going door to door in Mexico and round up the drug cartel members. Well, this switched my BS red light on. The war on the drug cartels in Mexico and Latin America is a ruse, just as the quote-unquote war on drugs has been in the USA, with the CIA facilitating it all to fund black ops projects. The Mexican government, perhaps the most corrupt in the Western Hemisphere, has been a partner with the drug cartels. Billions of dollars a year. You think they wouldn't be getting a piece of the action? Every time we hear of a cartel higher-up arrest, it is because he has not been paying his bribes, or he has been offered, and he is being offered as a PR sacrifice to make room for the next guy to take power and later take the fall. I know for a fact that the Yakuza has been moving in to Tijuana and other border towns, getting in on the sex trade and importing of heroin. The Mexican cartels deal with marijuana, coke, and meth. In other words, the Chinese are business partners with the cartels. And if they were to actually take the cartels out, as Drake claimed, it would be to eliminate the competition, not rid the world of their so-called evil. The second point, on Wolf Spirit Radio, when Drake was still broadcasting there with Diatra Lumer, Drake got his depends soiled when he thought Kerry Cassidy had slighted him. A forum post on Project Avalon accused Drake of being a member of the Illuminati, as it was found out that his real name was Drake Kent Bailey, and he had been posting online for a number of years, and in fact was a regular here at Revolution Radio's chat room as a member of the quote-unquote Royal Order of the Dragon, and had an affinity with the White Dragon Society. He seemed to take offense at being associated with the Illuminati, saying, "I am not some child-torturing thingamabob." He threatened to have his pals in the Pentagon shut down Project Camelot website for the insult, and alluded that Kerry Cassidy could be charged as a domestic terrorist, and that White Dragon ninjas, their honor insulted, may come around for revenge. Now wait a minute, Drake. If you are all for freedom and the restoration of the constitutional United States, why would you threaten the censorship of a website, nonetheless advocate censorship? You and your followers claim to abhor the present federal government, yet you threaten to use that very same system to have someone charged with domestic terrorism just because you were insulted? This definitely smelled of delusions of grandeur, that one man could command such power over not only a perceived insult, but an error in assignment of blame. Project Avalon is not part of Project Camelot anymore, and Kerry Cassidy did not make, nor was she responsible for, the post on that forum. Drake did admit somewhat he was wrong, but he did not apologize, nor did he offer himself to come onto Kerry's show and admit his wrongdoing. Instead, he continued on with his story, which gradually became diluted with high strangeness and bizarre innuendos. For some, Drake's abandoning practicality became an issue. Previously, he had talked down to earth and realistic. Then he began to reveal secret Star Trek-like technology, machines that could grow new limbs for amputees, food replicators that would end all hunger. There was his advice that clones tend to malfunction and that aliens from the Pleiades were referred to by the Pentagon generals as quote-unquote tree-hugging hippie aliens. The main issue, however, the arrest and the fall of the Cabal around the corner, were just not happening. And there was no indication, as he said there would be, that it was starting, other than perhaps news that international bankers seemed to be resigning or going on extended vacations worldwide, abandoning homes and disappearing into underground bases on or off-world facilities specifically built by and for the mega-rich and the Luciferium to hide from the coming events of the apocalypse. Now, there's no arguing that much of Drake originally claimed would happen, and still is, that he claims positive. It's positive. It's ideal. He's a sincere guy, and it all seems to be the best remedy for what ails the nation and the planet. He presses for the importance of community, or neighbors working together and helping and protecting one another, that everyone should follow the golden rule. There's nothing wrong with that. More power to it. I loved it. That's why I fell for Drake at first. But what happens when these promises fall flat? Well, people get angry and hurt, such as myself. I mean, I have to admit, I was buying what Drake and Fulford were saying back in March and April. Now, in June, I'm starting to think these guys are just info agents or have been duped themselves. There's a theory going around that if Drake is not a disinfo agent, he's being used by the Cabal to put disinfo out there, that this is all probably a PSYOPs research project to determine how many people out there will fall for the story and how many will act on it. The other theory is that Drake Bailey, a senior citizen non-vet, Santa Claus in camouflage, is a delusional old guy with nothing better to do in his retirement than indulge in his fantasies and a need to be seen as a messiah figure. But what if Drake is the real deal? What if? Then why haven't the mass arrests, this new financial system, and heaven on earth started as promised? Lately, I've seen on the Facebook page for Global Voice 2012, the new group that Drake is involved with, using their radio station as a platform, there are people there saying, well, when is this going to happen? I haven't paid my mortgage or my credit cards in 2 months. And unfortunately, Drake says he didn't advise people to do this, but a number of people have not been paying their bills and their mortgages because they believe that these mass arrests would occur imminently, and that the dollar would be switched to a new system, and then there'd be a whole new system, and debts would be forgiven, and blah blah this. And now they're getting their homes foreclosed on, and bill collectors knocking on the door. We saw this situation happen recently with the Ron Wineland preacher, and with Harold Camping before that, when people were spending their life savings on billboards and giving the money to churches and not paying their mortgages and stuff, and then when the rapture and end of the world didn't happen, they're faced with getting kicked out of their homes and having bad credit. And now this is occurring. It's almost sad. There was one post on the Facebook page is, well, when's this going to start happening? I haven't paid my mortgage. And last Sunday's Drake's radio show was another woman like that, crying, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? We don't want to pay our bills anymore. So who is Drake Bailey? From the About page on his blog, AmericanNationalMilitia.com, that's one word, AmericanNationalMilitia.com, he writes, my military service includes nuclear weapons, very high security clearance, and Vietnam. Most of the incidents from this time forward I was involved in at some level, major, minor, and local. I started in the field of information in the late 90s and progressed from that time forward. I use a portion of the old Cold War spy network, people in several sensitive positions, and those who agree to pass along info no one else gets. There are several contact avenues that also offer info, military, political, and civilian eyes. In all, an extreme information highway. The validity of what I've sent out has been the best at the time, almost all of which was verifiable. And yes, I have called on to prove a lot of it. I was called on to prove a lot of it at first. This was not an easy task and caused me to be able to protect and out the info at the same time. I learned how. Forces in the mainstream media took most of what I offered and called it everything but true. That I was a nightmare head case trying to cause problems through the use of my imagination and the internet. Those who own the media and its content, most of which is questionable at best, I know because I was directly involved in a few of those international and local incidents that were reported as something else altogether. So I have firsthand knowledge of this. I have been a patriot since taking my oath of service in the 1960s. I had always been raised to be a patriot, and that oath haunted me all the time until I decided I would start taking action. The present information I have shared comes from a plan I was privileged to read some years ago. To date, it has been in the works for well over 20 years. Many old-fashioned old-timers know better than the direction our country was headed, even way back then, so they started writing the plan. It deals with offering the basic freedoms our country was founded on and how to return to that freedom. My research extends into a lot of law application and the origins of the law itself. The offerings used in this manner in which I stated them to be used, when used correctly, I never lost. This includes local, state, federal, and international applications. A group of individual people in individual states have completed the paperwork that sets our nation free. It is my hope that we all can keep our freedom this time. That is up to we, the people. The extent of the information offered, the recording is at this time the limit I use to protect the many who are involved in our efforts. If anyone who reads this believes that freedom can still be available, then I urge all those to play the recording of others, like what's got a link to a recording that I haven't listened to. Anyway, a qualified person does not have to be a rocket scientist. Try someone who is so honest it hurts to be around them. A person who knows the meaning of right and wrong according to their conscience and who listens to it. In order to start to turn things around, it will take as many people as possible to stand up in any way they can. Put together groups all over the country at the local level. Get everyone to know each other and look into using your group to put the right kind of people in office. Who am I to speak, and by what authority do I do so? It is each person's constitutional duty to remove a repressive government. The present one qualifies. Repressive government. I feel a moral obligation to stop the theft so hungry children in our country of plenty can eat. I ain't doing this for me. It is for my children and grandchildren, because their future hangs in the balance. I feel it is the least I can do for them. As one voice in the wilderness, I cry freedom. Now that's very sincere. I believe him. Very idealistic, maybe a little naive. I don't know, but all around a good guy. Still, however, he's got a responsibility. He's got all these people following him, people not paying their mortgages and cards because they're believing his story, and so on. So there's some problems of logic. Looks like we're going to get close to the half-hour break. I'll go on until we hear it, and then on the second hour, I'd like to take calls. I've extended an offer to Drake to call in. He knows about this show. I know that he's on another show till 9 o'clock, and 9 o'clock Eastern Time is when I'd like people to phone in. Certainly hope that Drake might phone in, or his supporters or his detractors. If there's anything I'm saying that you think is incorrect or wrong, I'm open to hear about it. Or if you have issues with Drake or Ben Fulford or Nacera or whatever. So I'm going to talk about the problems in logic with Drake and Ben Fulford's scenario of what they say is going to happen. If you're looking clearly beyond the ideal world where all the bad guys would be tossed into the pokey, we have to consider the logistics and practicality of such a thing. Last week, Kerry Cassidy interviewed a guy named John La Huerta who addressed the mass arrest scenario. Would it really make a difference if all these bankers and politicians were arrested? He asked. That's a good question. Would it? While it may be a boost in morale for the people, would the incarcerations change the financial system and corrupt political arena? It goes to reason that other corrupt folks would just take their place. And consider this, the cabal orchestrating. And I'm back. Michael Hemmingson. The show is called The Art of Dreaming. And how does that fit in with the Drake issue? Well, it's all a dream. It's a big, wild, ideal, wonderful dream if it does happen. I am the host, who is the West Coast dwarf tossing champion, and I have the trophies to prove it. Just like to mention that Revolution Radio here at freedonslips.com is 100% user-supported. We do not run ads. We don't take grants. No one tells us what to say, what to do, what kind of hosts to have on, or guests, and host and guests. And so we do rely on your donations. If you go to the landing page over at freedonslips.com, you'll see a site support button that we do through PayPal that you could donate. You could sponsor a host in a show like me, or someone else like Hijacker or Kerry Cassidy or a Mad Painter or anyone else. Or you could just make a straight donation, or you could buy a banner ad, or you can buy some of our products like the Bullet USB drive and coffee mugs and everything else. So you go over there and lend us a bit of a hand so we can stay on the air and deliver some truth to you. Also, remember, you don't have to wait for us because we're already here. Coming up after the show is a special simulcast of Kerry Cassidy interviewing Courtney Brown, who's a remote viewer. I believe he's in San Diego. He used to be in San Diego. I don't know if he still is. he's a pretty big and well-known remote viewer, although he did have a big showdown with Art Bell in the end of the 90s, which resulted in a nasty lawsuit. But we don't want to talk about that, or do we? Maybe that someone should ask Courtney Brown that, is why did that lawsuit start, and I don't know. Maybe I'll ask that. I'll call in and ask that. And this Friday night at 8 p.m., I'm going to do a Revolution Radio special. I'm going to be interviewing Eva Moore, and we will be talking about the Bill Brock-Bader current situation with his incarceration and his mission, basically. So back to Drake. I was talking about the rather illogic or problems of actually doing a sort of mass arrest. I mean, Drake just says, I mean, he said there would be some resistance, but he just seems to, the way he puts it, maybe it's just his laid-back voice or calm attitude, that it's all going to run smoothly, that the federal marshals will be working with the sheriffs to arrest all these bankers and politicians and bad guys, with the military only as backup support, telling people not to worry when the tanks start rolling down the street, and giving some good advice. He was telling people not to, like militias and people with guns, not to engage with the military because they'll just get killed. But his saying, well, having militias, local militias, guarding power plants and water plants, and it just seems to think that it's all going to run smoothly without any chaos and some nefarious evil doing. And in fact, on Carrie Cassidy's blog, she had addressed the same thing with a blog titled "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised," and she says, and I'm quoting from her blog, "I believe this is going to be attempted, but not the way they think. From what I know of the many patriot movements within the U.S., including the White Hats, ordering arrests is far easier than done. And the kind of coordination required to mount such an effort will require some very sophisticated alignments and organization, which begs the question, under what group, who are not part of the cabal we all know and revile, will such a coordinated effort happen? While I applaud any revolution that wishes to clean up this mess called the United States, I do not see the military operating in unison and turning against its masters without a fair amount of bloodshed. It seems the secret government and Space Command, who are really running this place, are viewed as losing their grip. I cannot see this group, worldwide and off-planet, being dealt with so easily as described by Drake. I do think revolution is inevitable, at least here in the United States, and I do hope this is one of the many beginnings. But we have a long way to go before the dark cabal simply hands over their scalar particle beam weapons, Skynet robotic army of androids, command and control of the Mars and Moon colonies, and Phobos and their plans for humanity 2.0. Do you really think that they would relinquish their hold on this planet so easily? It is naive at best to think that the U.S. is not running the secret space program. Drake is painting a country that can supposedly close its borders and clean house when the very command and control of the off-world civilization they have built is orchestrated from here. Underground, too, cannot be ignored. The bases are vast and incredibly high-tech. Do you really think that they will just hand them over? Yes, there is a rebellion in our military, but it is going to take a coup de grace and a coup d'etat before there will be a changing of the guard. While Drake is describing and not willing, what Drake is describing and not willing to admit is a coup d'etat. Indeed, as I said before, if this happened, that's me. Okay. Okay, so Carrie Cassidy ends off saying, what Drake is describing and not willing to admit is a coup d'etat. Indeed, as I just said before a few minutes ago, if this happened, Obama and company would state it was indeed a coup by the rebel faction of the military, likening it to when Castro's soldiers overthrew the government there in the 50s, creating with creating fear that the U.S. would fall into a military state run by power-hungry four-star generals. Obama would surely ask the Chinese troops down south and the Russian troops up north to help battle the rebels. Borders would indeed close and martial law would be declared. So in many ways, when you think about it, the cabal would want this situation, chaos, riots, tanks in the streets, because then they could stretch some more hold around this, close the borders, martial law, everything, FEMA camps. Consider this. Ben Fulford proposes a world economy based on the machinations of a Yakuza-run organization, the White Dragon family. Is that what you want? Is that truly ideal? And now Drake proposes an overthrow by militias, Minutemen, and Pentagon generals. Is that what you want? Is that ideal? And is that NESARA? And what is NESARA? The story of NESARA, or maybe one of them, the National Economic Stabilization and Recovery Act, is long and complicated, and there seems to be two different documents out there. It has been in the works for 2 decades or more. Some say it is disinfo, some say fantasy, and some say it is being held up by the bad guys, that 9/11 was one method of stopping it being enacted. So basically, NESARA implements the following 19 changes. 1, zeroes out all credit card, mortgage, and other bank debt due to illegal banking and government activities. This is the Federal Reserve's worst nightmare, a jubilee or a forgiveness of debt. 2, abolishes the income tax. 3, abolishes the IRS. Employees of the IRS will be transferred into the U.S. Treasury National Sales Tax area. 4, creates a 14% flat rate, non-essential, new items only sales tax revenue for the government. In other words, food and medicine will not be taxed, nor will used items such as old homes and cars. 5, increases benefits to senior citizens. 6, returns constitutional law to all courts and legal matters, because as you may or may not know, the courts are currently under admiralty law. 7, reinstates the original title of nobility amendment, which I believe is the 13th Amendment, stating, well, we get into that later. 8, establishes new presidential and congressional elections within 120 days after NESARA's announcement. The interim government will cancel all national emergencies and return us back to constitutional law. 9, monitors elections and prevents illegal election activities of special interest groups. 10, creates a new U.S. Treasury rainbow currency backed by gold, silver, and platinum precious metals, ending the bankruptcy of the United States initiated by Franklin Roosevelt in 1933. 11, forbids the sale of American birth certificate records as chattel property bonds by the U.S. Department of Transportation. If I don't know if none of you know about this, our birth certificates are used as bonds and traded on the New York Stock Exchange. 12, initiates new U.S. bank. 12, initiates new U.S. Treasury bank system in alignment with constitutional law. 13, eliminates the Federal Reserve System. During this transition period, the Federal Reserve will be allowed to operate side by side of the U.S. Treasury for 1 year in order to remove all Federal Reserve notes from the money supply. 14, restores financial privacy. 15, retains all judges and attorneys in constitutional law. 16, ceases all aggressive U.S. government military actions worldwide. 17, establishes peace throughout the world. And 18, releases enormous sums of money for humanitarian purposes. 19, enables the release of over 6,000 patents of suppressed technologies that are being withheld from the public under the guise of national security, including free energy devices, anti-gravity, and sonic healing machines. Well, that certainly sounds wonderful. And a lot of what Ben Fulford has been saying, such as under Fulford's White Dragon monetary system, every man, woman, and child would be allotted $120,000, but not in cash, because they would just wind up spending it and the money going back to the banker guys and debt starting all over again. Instead, the $120,000 per every man, woman, and child on Earth would be used to for humanitarian programs, creation of parks and housing for the poor, and cleaning up the smog and radiation and whatnot. But yeah, so it all sounds pretty wonderful. I've been hearing it from Drake, full forward. There's a new guy called Cobra who I believe is doing his first interview somewhere on Blog Talk Radio right now using a voice alterer. Supposedly this guy, Cobra, who's involved with this website called Portal 2012, is also another insider white hat guy in the Pentagon or the military or something, who's basically saying the same stuff that Drake and Fulford have been talking about. And he's saying, oh, the mass arrests are going to happen any day now, blah, blah, this and blah, blah, that. So the Nasera tale, as you read it, also includes the cloning of Janet Reno and Bill Clinton, with Clinton's clone forced to sign the bill at gunpoint from Navy SEALs and Delta forces storming the White House on orders of generals in the Pentagon, which can't remember what date. I might have been Clinton's second term, which allegedly he was cloned and forced to sign the Nasera, and which still has to come about. So anyway, there's also, speaking of clones, there's a rumor on the internet from the Mr. Former White Hat guy that Drake, the original Drake, was removed and replaced by a clone. And the reason why his story is now different from when he first appeared on the scene, that he is indeed a clone and seems to be breaking down with this recent posting. Okay, so on the Global Voice 2012 Facebook site, yesterday, well, Drake has been writing some really weird posts that probably does look like he's going off into space. He posted this, and it's not going to make sense, but this is what he posted. Numbers, significant impacts, and usages. These are all found in gematria plus Greek letters plus sacred geometry. 11 equals leaving, verifying equals endow with life or renewed life. Leavening the process of elevating or making 11. Fibonacci count, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, the exact growth basis of all things. Male, female equals 3. Duality of man, 1 and 1 or 11. A very long study, 2 to 3 years. As for time, look up universal galactic time. For a spoken reality, ancient Hindu coupled with the outcast Buddhist language that is shown only as a glyph. Yes, the cosmos does speak in numbers, which come from the Creator. I don't know, maybe it was a poem, but it seems to be some sort of a Mandelbrot chaos theory calculation that pretty much, to me, reads like the scribblings of a fellow inside a day room of the bug house, maybe hanging out with Hijacker there in the day room. And then next, there is this guy on YouTube who's posted a video called My Visit with Drake, and it features a poem in rhymed heroic couplets with funny background redneck images. And so I thought I'd read that, or you could go over on YouTube, just type in My Visit with Drake, and you'll get to the video. It's about 10 minutes long. It's pretty funny. But on My Visit with Drake, he writes, I used to see promise in the military man who goes by Drake. In spite of the fact that his ideas were good, I ultimately had to say goodbye and conclude that the promising ally was a fake when Drake took to promoting the Nasera lie. I was beginning to forget him when I got a call from the West Virginia man who had heard of my decision and wanted to talk this out. He invited me to his home to discuss his game plan, said he wanted me to understand what this was all about. When I arrived, he took 2 ice-cold beers from his cooler inside, which was actually an ice-filled broken washing machine. He said, come with me, and we went inside. There he had the most comfortable swing that I had ever seen. He drove me around town to show me real Southern hospitality. He said rednecks have style, and we drove past the fire station where a fire truck had the biggest darn tires that you ever did see. Each one could have been its own orbiting space station. I met one of Drake's friends who was quite outstanding, without a doubt. He couldn't hide the fact that his stomach distends. I mean, if you saw him in a crowd, he would certainly stand out. I guess he was one of Drake's redneck beer-drinking friends. The women were quite plentiful in Drake's hometown, and Drake said if I deemed it, one could even be mine. He introduced me to some hotties who were just hanging around, but they were more than I could handle. I mean, 3 at a time? He took me to a 14-room mansion that had the Southern style. It sounded amazing, with each room having a spectacular view. He asked me what I thought. I said, it's quite versatile. 7 stacked mobile homes with stairs, a virtual breakthrough. We stopped for lunch, and Drake called it redneck seafood. There was a hot dog cut to look like an octopus, tentacles and all. He asked if I was hungry, and I said it looks a bit crude, and recommended that we take in a game of baseball. In Drake's interviews, you may have heard dogs barking. I got a chance to see one of these redneck mutts. He came right up to the car while Drake was parking. The dog had buck teeth, and you probably think I'm nuts. I met Drake's old lady. She was a queen of the house, chatting on the porch with her neighbor friend, keeping cool with her drink stashed inside her tank top blouse. A vegetarian diet for both is what I would recommend. His niece dropped by to show us her new stunt. She had fake red hair and carried beer without any hands. She had one tooth missing, and it was right in front. To drink her beer, she had to do handstands. We talked about politics while Drake watched his kid. We both agreed that the government was out of control, bankrupting us for generations and then telling us a fib. His kid freaked out when Drake told him how much he already owed. We went to the ball game in Drake's topless Cadillac. When we got to our seats, Drake let out a chuckle, then nudged me. The shirtless man in front of us had a very hairy back, and somebody had shaved it to reveal the number 3. I have to laugh when I think of women carrying drinks between their breasts. I've seen the redneck style, and it's different, to say the least. I'm back home now, and I'm getting some rest. I learned a lot about life in the nation's southeast. You've got to see the video, too, so check it out. But it reminds me of my encounter with Drake. So there Drake and I were in Nevada hanging out at the brothels with Clarence Thomas. Why not? So Drake said he would foot the bill there at the brothel restaurant. We were having beers and stuff, but his credit card was denied, and he was pretty upset. "You thingamabobs!" he cried. "How dare you reject my card? My credit is impeccable! I have friends in high places. I could have this establishment shut down by elite Delta forces and have tanks surrounding this building. You can't do squat to me because I am Drake, loyal order of the dragon, man of the hour, messiah of the Minutemen." All right, that's my expose on Drake. We're almost at the top of the hour, so when we after the break, if you'd like to call in, you can. I don't have the phone number in front of me. You could Skype using hang on a second. Okay, so you can call in at 347-688-2902. That's 347-688-2902. And you could use Skype as well. Our Skype name is Freedom Screens, or no, Freedom Screen, not plural, Freedom Screen. So again, you could phone in at 347-688-2902 or Skype us at Freedom Screen. I'd like to hear from Drake to top that off, and if because of his other show, and if he can't make it, I will certainly make room for him to come on next week if he wants to defend his position. Again, I don't want it to seem like I'm completely attacking him. He does, I believe that he believes what he says. I believe he's sincere. I believe he's very ideal and hopeful. But the fact that the things he said were to happen have not happened, that the scenario that he presents and paints, much like Full Forward, there's the logistics of it and the practicality and logic just don't jibe. Even if it were to happen, it's going to be messy. And even now Drake is saying, before he was saying it would take 72 hours to 2 weeks to clear everything up, and now he's saying 30 days. That the banks would be shut down, much like apparently I guess a bank in Italy has shut down, a small bank, but an indication of what may be coming perhaps. So I'm not being critical about Drake. I'm just questioning whether or not he's being used as a psyops operation, or if he's just delusional and hopeful. I don't. And we're back. This is The Art of Dreaming with your host, Michael Hemmingson, out here in the West Coast. I've been talking about the situation with Drake and his rise to alternative media fame and possible crash. So I'm opening the show up for any callers, if there's any. Skype call or whatever.
Ring.
Ring? No?
I'm calling in.
You're calling in? Do you have something to say, Amen?
Yeah. What makes this guy think the bankers are just going to let him arrest him?
That's the whole point. I mean, or even the politicians. I mean, and as well as the military they have.
I see this as a big fancy fairy tale myself. I mean, I know nothing about Drake. I'm not saying I'm any kind of authority on anything like that, but human nature would tell you they'd be running for the hills and groves if they thought this was really going to happen.
Well, apparently, I mean, there has been in the last couple of months an inordinate amount of international bankers and national banker people in the banking system resigning.
Well, couldn't that just be chalked up to them awakening?
That could, yeah. Who knows? But they've used it. I mean, they've said this is an indication of these guys running for the hills, as you said, because they know this is going to happen, or maybe they know that an asteroid is coming, or that the Anunnaki are coming, or Nibiru, or whatever. I mean, there's that.
I've never even heard this Drake guy, so I don't know nothing about him. Now, I've read a little bit of whatever his name is there, Fulford?
Ben Fulford, yeah.
Yeah, I've read a little bit about him, but just I don't know, it just doesn't seem right to me, you know. I just don't see them. They're the ones pulling the strings, you know. I don't see the government turning around and cutting the strings, or how would you put it? Something about the you don't. Oh shoot, I'm tongue tied now. You don't bite the hand that feeds you.
Right.
You know, I just don't see it happening. I mean, I'd love to see it happen now. I mean, it'd make a hell of a story for the world, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, when it first came out, I was like, oh yeah, cool, you know. But when you stop to think about it, as Carrie said in her blog, that this is going to be, it would be messy and just complicated. And who do you know who to trust in such a big? I mean, Drake's contends that the United States Marshals would be working with all the local, all the sheriffs. I mean, there's something like, 3,600 counties in the country, so 3,600 sheriffs. And interestingly enough, some sheriffs have been talking about that. Because
it'd be great if it happened now. I mean, I would think it would definitely step the United States back up to world power status, you know, real quick, as far as economics go.
Well, economically, yeah, and if all debts were forgiven and we just start from scratch, I mean, you know, that certainly would make a lot of people happy, I suppose. But then would we just go back into debt? I mean, if you clear out the credit cards and stuff.
Well, that's human nature there, you know. We have to change the whole system, I think. You know, we just can't throw it out and then start it all over again. I mean, we'll end up in the same position eventually.
Yeah, and like I said, it's ideal, you know, going back to constitutional law, since we're currently under admiralty law with the United States being bankrupt since 1933. But the thing with the sheriffs too, another thing with the sheriffs is a lot of these sheriffs. I mean, there's a couple of videos on YouTube about like the West Coast sheriffs getting together about this, that they feel that the U.S. government is trying to get rid of the sheriff system because by law, like federal agents, FBI, CIA, or Department of Interior, or whatever, they can only operate in counties by the approval of the sheriff. I mean, any sheriff could tell the FBI or any federal agent, FEMA, to get out of town because they don't have jurisdiction in counties.
Well, they would if if we were under martial law, though.
Yeah, exactly, because you would suspend that.
Right. We're living in a scary time, if you ask me.
Well, may you live in interesting times, like that Chinese proverb.
We're definitely doing that now.
Well, I mean, something's for certain is that something's on the verge. Something's going to happen. You could feel it in the air. Other people feel it. It's. Have we been joined by someone?
Yeah, I believe it's SJ.
Yes, it is.
Hey, SJ.
I know that telephone number now.